Last month about are you working at your job like your life depended on it? Are you really making a difference? I'll tell you what, if you got any exceptions to what I just pointed to, the exceptions prove the rule because they're gosh darn few and far between. I'll bet on it. Life is not about making a difference. Life is not about counting. Life is what's left when you find out you don't make any difference. I wish I could take you back to your childhood by some kind of regression. And I wish I could bring you through your childhood when you had dreams, when you had visions, when you were naive, when you didn't have those nice little boundaries in which you now operate successfully. And I wish I could move us forward in our experience to that point where we finally gave in and realized it doesn't make any difference. I watch my young son and my two youngest daughters, and I watch the commitment, the total investment of themselves in things that I would consider silly. But never mind the capacity for a total investment. I watch it keep getting blunted. They'll learn, they will learn. They'll become socialized, accultured, they'll learn. They'll learn to construe themselves, to live themselves, and to be alive in a world in which it doesn't matter. They'll learn not to be totally invested in anything. They'll learn not to take care so much. They will learn not to care so much. Wow. You have you have learned not to care so much. You will give up not because you're a quitter, but because you've learned not to care. You wonder why you can't follow through with your own convictions, that when you make up your mind, it doesn't mean much. You wonder why, on the simplest kinds of silliest things like your diet or your exercise program or other things that ought to be as easy and as silly as that, do you wonder why? Because in a world in which you don't count, you learn to blunt your investment in things. Not you learn not to care, and you don't care. Instead, you feel sympathy for that ain't caring. Sympathy isn't caring. You feel a little sympathy. You see, it gets you off the hook. You don't have to care. You're respected in your community. If you've got the respect of your community, you don't have to care because you've got the prize. I mean, heck, that's what everybody's working for. That's the prize. Don't you get it? That's what life's about. When you don't make any dang difference, or that's what life's about when you don't make any dang difference. Life's about everybody's approval. Like I said, none of us want to say it. Most of us have organized our lives around hiding it. We organize our lives so as to hide the fact that we don't make any difference. It's like a conspiracy, an illusion. Nobody wants to be the first to point to the fact that the king has no clothes. I want you to take a look at the way life is constructed, at the way we put it together, at our system of values, at what everybody agrees makes a wonderful guy or gal, or a wonderful gal. What is it that captures our attention? Why is it that 49 Americans held hostage in an embassy in Iran fills the newspaper and the television screens and pushes off the page the fact that the lives of 2 million Cambodians are not only in jeopardy, but that it is certainly that many of them will die. This was written in the 90s or the 80s. And the best we can hope to do is to forestall a real elimination of a whole culture of people. Now, some nitwit will say that he heard, he heard, he heard said that 2 million Asians we're more than 49 Americans. That's because that's the system in which you think. If you think that I said that, what I said is that you and I have got to take a look at the way we've got it put together. One of the ways, taking a look at the way we've got it put together, is the situation in Iran. We'll shove out the news, shove out of our interest. It isn't them. They put on television and write in newspapers what sells. They've got the same problem that we do. Nothing they do makes a difference. They're stuck in the same track. No kidding. Talk to them. Don't talk to them as reporters. Talk to them as human beings where there isn't something to pretend or prove or protect. They're a reflection of our interests. And let me tell you, every once in a while, when one of them has the courage to do something out of a sense of making a difference, it very rarely gets any agreement. Their plight is much like ours. It's not them and us who all share in this. So what is it about the way in which we've got our lives construed that makes the situation in Iran shove out of the news the situation in Cambodia? And the situation in Cambodia at least gets a little news, but the fact that 15 million people die every year as a consequence of being improper or insufficiently fed, the fact that 21 children die every minute, that you and I are alive, that ain't news. That isn't news. That is not worthy of our attention. If it were, if it would be in the news, yeah, like I said, every once in a while, someone acts with great courage, sticks their neck out, does something, but man, it's a spit in the ocean for the most part. It's a spit in the ocean because the condition is we don't count. The condition is you don't make a difference. You try to put a drop of yellow in a sea of green, so all you get is a bunch of green. If the condition is that you don't count, that's the condition of life. If that's the very principle out of which we live, then our greatest achievements, even our real expressions of humanity, even acts of great courage and heroism will not count, and they don't. We have men and women all around the world acting courageously and heroically, and no notice of it is even taken for the most part. So what I'm trying to get across is not that you don't matter, but that you and I live in a condition in which no one matters. What I'm trying to get across is not that you and I don't count, but that we live in a condition in which nobody counts. Therefore, you can't count. Therefore, who you are doesn't make a difference. We've got this principle of light, this thing which runs our life, shapes our life without even knowing it. Most people never even take the time to wonder what the heck their principles are. And when they do, all they can see is the ones they made up and that are up at the surface. How about the ones that underlie the ones that you made up that are at the surface? You know, the things I believe in. You know, the things I believe in, the things you believe in. How about the stuff that's underneath that determines what you're going to believe, what you're allowed to believe, what you can believe, what it's all right to believe? Each human being in this room, each one of us has a basic life principle, which basic life principle is like a box, and we live our lives inside that box. You know, I can go to here, but no further. I can go to here, but no further. I can go to here, but no further. I can go to there, but no further. I can go to here, but no further. I must live inside this box. Do yourself a favor. Don't be listening to me. Take a look inside yourself and see if you can discover that you've got a basic principle. Now, at first, you'll begin to see that the array that comes off the basic principle, and you'll see probably 2 or 3 or 5 or 6 principles by which you live your life. Get ahead. Get all you can. Be first. Be smart. Be creative. Be well thought of. Be liked. Be bad. Be tough. Be a man, etc., etc., etc. You'll begin to notice that you've got certain principles. Even if you can't get what your basic principle in life is, begin to take a look down underneath yourself and see if you can see that you've got a basic principle, that there's a principle on which your life is based. You don't think the principle, by the way, you don't think your own basic life principle. What you think is limited by, formed by, shaped by your basic life principle, be dignified. A lot of ways you think. If your basic life principle is to be dignified, will have to fit. You can think outside that box. You can't act outside that box. And the shape that you take in the box is formed by the sides of the box. That is to say that your whole life, your feelings, even what you can feel, what you can think, what you can imagine, what you can create, the way you behave, who you are, what you do, the way you express yourself, all limited by and shaped by your basic principles. Now, as I get into this a little more, you'll begin to see that, yes, it really is true that people's lives are limited by and shaped and formed by their basic principle. Lots of people in other cultures and our own come and look at us and think that our basic principle is to get approval. Don't dare to do anything which is not approved of, and always do things which will gain approval. Take a look at it. Isn't an enormous amount of behavior dictated by the need for approval? You can't see it in yourself. Can you look outside and see it in the behavior of others? Real clear. Another basic principle which rules people's lives, outside of which they cannot behave, outside of which they cannot experience, cannot perceive, cannot think, cannot feel, cannot live. Don't let them think of you. Don't let them think you got conned. Don't let them think you got co-opted. Don't let them think you got taken in. The basic principle which rules and guides and shapes and forms and limits people's lives. They go to life inside that box. It's not what they find out there. Yes, they also find it out there, but they find it out there because they can't perceive outside the limits of the box. You and I live in a box about which we are unconscious and unaware, which we formed no intentionality and no purpose, was formed in reaction or unconsciously, not purposefully, not intentionally, not self-awaredly, not humanely, but mechanically, defensively, reactively. And that basic principle in which and that basic principle in people's lives will be consistent with you don't matter. Who you are does not make a difference. Now we've been done, or what we've attempted to do in this work is way back in the beginning, been working on our way back to the beginning. At the beginning, we find some place around the beginning, we find a life principle. And now I have to introduce something which is a great deal more difficult than anything about which I've spoken about thus far. if you were here with any intention to get what was going on today, then what we've been discussing, what we've covered so far is pretty clear. It's not that you don't have some questions about what I said. It's not that you understand everything I said. It's that essentially, I'm quite sure you are with me. This hasn't been very taxing so far. Now, we're going to get into something very taxing. The reason we're going to get into something very taxing is because the stuff that isn't very taxing doesn't make any difference. For God's sake, are you so stupid that you don't understand that what you can understand is a mere extension of what you already understand, and that what you already understand extended is tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow? Is that unclear for anybody in the room? That if we deal in together is an extension of what we've already understand, of what we already understand. It's an extension of what we've already got. And that's our plight, is more of the same. You need to be willing to deal with that which boggles your mind. That's what it means to think for yourself. I'm going to do a lot of talking about thinking for yourself, because I think that what passes for thinking for yourself in this culture is not thinking for yourself. I don't think your strongly held opinions are thinking for yourself. What you mean when you say, I thought it for my see, what we hold is dear. We think that the intellect, see, somebody who has 30 thoughts is more intelligent than someone who has only 10 thoughts. He thinks more. Oh, he's a real thinker. She's a real thinker. They do a lot of thinking. See, the more you think, the more intelligent you are, all but they're really intelligent. They think better. See, they take the same old bag of thoughts that we've been sifting through now for a couple decades or more, and they put it together in a new and better way, and they think better. But of course, the ultimate is to think different. Thinking different than other people is not thinking for yourself. Strongly held beliefs are not thinking for yourself. Figuring it out, that same old bag of thoughts and that same old bag of principles, is not thinking for yourself. That's saying you can think in this box. See the box? We've got lots of great thoughts in that box, but by God, you think outside that box. If you think a thought outside that box, it is going to make any sense. Is it going to make any sense inside the box? No. Therefore, if you think outside the box, we're going to call it a gobbledygook. We're going to call it nonsense. But let me tell you something. The truth does not exist in that box. Listen, you and I live in a paradigm of reality. That is to say, our view of what's real, our view of what's possible and impossible, our view of what's true and what's false, our view of what's right and what's wrong, our view of what we can do and what we can't do, our view of what we actually did and what we actually did not do, is all that. What is going on, and what is going on you and me in life are experiencing, and moment by moment, and the process of life, what you have and what you do and who you are, that's all happening in a paradigm. The only things which make sense are those things which are consistent with the content in the paradigm. Even statements about the paradigm itself will not make any sense in a given set. Statements about the set itself do not make any sense. Only elemental statements make sense in a set because they agree with or disagree with the other elements. The set itself is of a different logical type. Therefore, statements about the set itself do not make any sense inside of the set. Now, what does this all mean? It means that any statement about the paradigm in which you and I are functioning, or any statements about another paradigm, will not make any sense. Anything of any value outside the process of day by day in this petty pace will at first appear to be nonsensical. It is only that which is consistent with day by day in this petty case or pace which will be immediately understandable. Look, I didn't make it that way. Don't look annoyed at me, just reporting the facts. All right, peace, love. Subscribe, comment, share. See ya. Bye-bye. Oh, there we go.